Staying with aviation matters, Wizz Air, who used to operate, if I'm correct, out of Cork, don't anymore. Did they go to Gdansk or a few places like that out of Cork years ago? They've come up with this idea where you pay them €500 a year and you can fly as much as you want. At least that's what I think they're saying. There's got to be a catch. Of course there's a catch. There's always a catch. A travel journalist, editor of Air and Travel magazine, Eoghan Corry. It sounds too good to be true. They don't fly out of Ireland anymore anyway. Owen, do they? Good morning.
Good morning, PJ. Yes, the last place they flew out of was Cork, and they withdrew in 2013. Ryanair decided to open a few new routes from Cork, and 3 of the routes they chose were exactly the same routes that Wizz were on. So Wizz were gone within a year after that. Some listeners will remember Gdansk and Poznan and Wroclaw sites. Okay, it's a very odd one. €500 for a season ticket, and then you pay a tenner, and then you book 3 days in advance. And 3 days in advance, maybe the routes you want aren't going to be available. It looks to me like it's a way of filling up the last few seats without having, they're not going to get a big price for them. But the way low-cost aviation works, very often, if you book early enough, you're going to get that flight for a tenner anyway to start with.
Yeah. There's a thing about load factor, which is a term people use a lot. Load factor, isn't it, Owen? It's how many people need to be on that plane for it to pay for itself. And low cost has a very high load factor.
Yeah, it's that the low cost fills the flight. It's a slightly different. I mean, it'll pay for itself fairly early on in the equation. Long ago, the airlines all worked on how much can we get someone to pay for a seat. So it's a pretty daft theory, Peter, when you think of it. So your ultimate success is to get someone to pay €10,000 for a seat. The way low cost, and Michael O'Leary is an expert in this. Remember, he's a pilot. He was not a pilot like Willie Walsh and all the other guys. He was an accountant. All he wants is those beans to stack up. So when he came, he worked out, we get the aircraft to pay for itself. If it doesn't pay for itself, we cancel the route and we fill every seat, because even if you've got, a fairly good yield off your flight and you've got 10 empty seats at the end of it, why not give those 10 extra seats away, and we'll sell someone a cup of coffee or make some sort of money on it. His ideal is to reach a 100% load factor. The average for the industry is around 82%. The average for Ryanair, it dropped because of the row they had with some of the online travel agents, but it's around 95-96% during the summer. Wizz would be chasing some load factor a bit like that, and this looks like a way of doing it. And the other thing you wonder is it because they needed the cash? It's a good way of injecting cash, and some airlines have tried that in the past to their cost. It has to be added, because the customer always wins.
It sounds or looks like something that would be a benefit to a business traveller who moves around a lot. Is it 40 different destinations Wizz serve now? Who moves around a lot and might be flying at short notice? This would suit them.
It could be that. It could be that you sort of get the prime pick. You get to move in early and you will get your seat. And the fact that it's only confined to 10,000 people, €500, 10,000 people, it's not a hell of a lot of money if you're short of money. American Airlines brought in a famously daft lifetime flying around tickets way back in the 80s. Michael Dell, who set up
I remember that story. Do
Michael
people
Dell, who set up the plant in Limerick, was one of the guys who bought it. But it ended up with people, they're still trying to get rid of it, because it ended up, with costing them more than they made in money at the time.
Right. I suppose there's no chance, listening to what he was saying about it, there's no chance, let's listen to him again, that Michael O'Leary will follow suit with this.
It's a bit of a marketing scam. I mean, it's €500. You can fly as often as you like, but you pay €9 every time you book a flight, and you can only book the flights 3 days before departure, so most of the flights will be full. There'll be no seat availability. It's an interesting marketing stunt, but that's all it is. People will still recognise that if you really want a low fare across Europe, whether in Wizz markets or in Ireland, you'll book Ryanair.
He gets the ad in always. Do you think others might try it, Owen?
I doubt it. What we've seen is a couple of people doing it on effectively commuter routes. So in that case, it would be the equivalent of a leap card. You see it only applies to one route, and you see it in countries like Norway, which is a smallish population, about 5.5 million, and very, very long. So you know, people who have to fly down to Oslo from Hammerfest or somewhere like that, Tromsø or one of those places, Kirkenes, they would use it almost like a commuter ticket. SAS had an equivalent, and I saw something from Frontier Airlines that looks quite similar. And AirAsia, Tony Fernandez, a huge admirer of what Ryanair has done. He tries to model himself a little bit on Ryanair, but he's based in Malaysia, and his sector lengths are a lot longer than Ryanair's. You know, they would have to be 4 or 5 hours for most.
Predictably, the environmental lobby has hit back at this. They say groups like Stay Grounded, which new ones on me, they say that, in fact, it's less air travel we should be encouraging, not more. Just ask you briefly, Eoghan, is air travel cleaner now than it used to be?
The environmental argument doesn't make sense, PJ, because you're actually filling in existing flights. There isn't going to be extra fuel spent on it. It's actually, you know, probably if you're going to accept air travel, which a lot of environmentalists do not, but if it's going to be there, you're going to be filling the aircraft rather than flying them half empty.
Mm-hmm. Is air travel, lastly and briefly, is it cleaner now than it was 10 years ago, maybe?
Undoubtedly cleaner, less noisy, going all in the right direction. It's going to take huge investment to get it further. Sustainable aviation fuel is 3 times the price of ordinary aviation fuel. So the airlines need to be profitable and to be investing. Not all of them are. The two Irish airlines, thanks to Aer Lingus being owned by a Spanish company and Ryanair's tremendous business model, they're both profitable. But we don't, you know, this notion that you stop flying and you punish airlines with heavy taxes, that actually works against making aviation more sustainable. It seems it's more likely to lead to all sorts of extra problems as a policy that were not foreseen by the people drawing up the policy.
All right, Eoghan, thank you as always, Eoghan Corry, a travel journalist.